Nice to see everyone. So, can I see how many people know someone with diabetes? Yeah, see, that's a lot of people. So I do think this is quite an impactful project. And the first moment I met Livia, I could definitely tell that she was on the right track with the development of solutions for people with diabetes. Making it open source, running it on her DAO. Okay, I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's have Livia come to the stage and set glucose down.
Okay, so I'll start with a bit about myself. So, as background, I am not bioinformatician or programmer, I'm just an architect, but the important recommendation in this case is that I'm a type 1 diabetes, and I was kind of frustrating with what happened with CGMs. So we have the part about what is the thing. CGMs are the sensors, you can actually see one live on me, which measure continuously your blood glucose. You have basically a commercially available product which gives you a reading of what happens during the day with your glucose level. Here is basically an extract and analysis over a week. You have this very interesting, well, you can call it a squiggly line if you want, where the game is basically stay between those two lines, so you are safe. You have to be in range, as you see, the 78th percentile in range, not too low or not too high. For normal people, this is kind of usually achieved. For diabetics, it's a bit tougher. So here is basically the squiggly line for a longer period of two weeks. These readings are basically produced automatically. But what is the problem? The problem is we have this data as a snapshot. We don't have it like to analyze stuff about it, or the analytics are pretty poor. I started looking at it and I said, there are recurring patterns. I wonder why people don't look at it. And so I started searching studies. And studies actually showed very interesting correlation. First of all, that glucose variability is related to longevity. This was a study on Chinese centenarians, which proved basically that they were more they had less variation actually in their glycate, HbA1, than their offsprings and their control group, meaning that they were more stable. They did not have like highs and lows like I have here. And they tried to find if there's a direct correlation between the two. That's what the study entailed, that it might be. Other studies show that diabetics are using the CGMs, but also, non-diabetic people could use it, and why would they do so? And they gave a pretty good graphical description, schematics, let's say, of what it could be. I mean, for people like us who watch over their lifestyle and health in hope of living a longer, healthier life, it's actually kind of important. But also for athletes or people who are sports oriented. They want to have better performance, and for such they have to analyze their data. Here it's more closely to my squiggly line graphics, where they had a greater cohort and they wanted to see what happens basically after breakfast, and they had the timestamp, the time frame, and seeing that there was literally an increase basically in blood glucose in the morning, where people usually either skip breakfast or have a very healthy, very satious breakfast to cover them for the entire day, in the classical version of we're having 2 meals, not 3 a day. This study, which is one of the last, was more interesting because actually showed direct relations between shapes of the graphs and the conclusion. This was made basically in the glucose resistant test that is usually done in pregnant women, and for 2 hours they test their glucose variation, and they actually said that there were 2 main shapes, biphasic and monophasic. monophasic were more likely to have a higher blood glycid than the ones with biphasic. So they directly correlated the shape with an occurrence, which is pretty recent because it was published, I think, in 2023. And important because if they notice this by just looking at some people during 2 hours, you would start to wonder what would happen if you look at a larger population for more hours, actually. And in these two last studies, we actually get into the domain of prediction. There was, a documentation, a paper, and GitHub data set, where you could actually see that people have been struggling to have predictions over glucose values and basically to see which one is best. In this glucobench repo and affiliated paper, they basically tried models of predictions available on the market, openly available, and they ended up with this kind of chart where basically they say how close it is to prediction, and most of them are not as close as they could be. And some of them, like the glue former, the one that was proposed to be the best because it was transformer, latest model, and so forth, didn't even have RMSE and ME because, well, they couldn't use data. That was what the authors told us. They're like, you tested the others, and why is the last one without any such information? And they said, well, okay, well, I can speak louder, don't worry. Well, we could have, but we didn't have enough data. That's what they answered. And I was like, why didn't you have enough data? It's because publicly available, there is such scant amount of data, literally. Because it's like the data sets that are available without accreditation institution or hospitals, it's about 180 people for 2 months. That's all the data they have. However, on the first day of RDD, I received literally the link submitted actually on 20th August this year, where they did a similar named model, that is glue former with capital F, where they managed to get more data and to predict. They looked at a cohort actually, not at individual, to predict basically their likelihoods of illnesses or associated risks. That's what they're looking at. And they had better indicators in this case. But still, their data is not publicly available. So if you want their data sets or their models, you can't access them. So you as a citizen scientist or whoever wants to try anything, even on their own, is not available. So I started, okay, you don't have data. Let's play with my own data. I had 5 years of continuous monitor data, which I gathered my own. I can do whatever I want with it. First of it, I tried to look it from the image part. So see, actually, these are examples of my first attempts at clustering. And visually, it can be seen they're actually similar in shape. The computer had no information, he had just the image, and the thing clustered the images which are similar. And he managed to do quite well, on the first try, but not very efficient. So I still kept searching because I wanted something faster and more efficient. And while searching and discussing with other people, I reached this kind of solution, which was glucose DAO. Because I said, okay, the first problem we had no data sets because they were blocked by institution, by big pharma. We don't care, they were blocked, they were not accessible. So we need to have a public data set. We have models, but we're not sure of how good they are because we can't have the data to test them. And maybe there would be more models if people were free to experiment, which would do if they had with what to do it, obviously. So that's why we have to try the models. Also, why established this DAO? Because you have to have something like a structure, which is not really a company, but to have sort of an organization to allow you to like get the data, promote people, promote their ideas, and so forth. So that's how I came with the idea of basically Glucose DAO. That was in May this year. After May this year, we had some progress. So this is an extract from a poster figure presented at the RDB, where we presented the actual glue former transformer that was mentioned previously, which managed to predict really close to what happened, trained on the 5 years of data. So the people were right, their code was good, but it couldn't have been proven because they were not publicly accessible. They just trained it on the data, and you can see there in the, I can't go there because the projector would like shadow. You see the red line, that's the prediction basically. The blue line is what actually happened, and you can see how close they basically are. But this raised new questions, of course. And the question would have been, is it better if we use more data sets? I mean, if we have more people? Should we have a foundational model which you overfit for each person or not? But for that, it's a vicious circle. We're returning to, we don't have data to test it on. So, we first tried to see how accurate it was with what we've got. And basically you can see that all of these figures, which the highest is 17.53, are actually lower than the ones we've got in the Glucobench, where they tested the official datasets and the models that exist. So basically, with just one person's data, you manage to train a more efficient model than the ones available on the market with basically an open source code, which is really interesting because I've talked with representatives from universities, and they were like, you know, if you have more data, it starts to get fuzzier after 15 minutes. We managed to predict it for 1 hour in this part. So what did we try to achieve? Basically, this is kind of a very schematic roadmap. We have to have the data gathering and model training and testing to see which way is better. And unfortunately, all this kind of go in parallel with intermittent stops because you don't have, like, you have a certain point for data, then you test it, and maybe by the time you test it, more data hopefully comes, and you can draw some conclusions on which to edit basically on the next phases. Because besides the part with, well, programming, coding, and so forth, there is also the part of community forming and networking. Because first of all, more people need to know about this. And, well, community forming, yeah, you have to have it because people are gathered around ideas. And, well, we have diabetic communities. I mean, there are forums. Most people there want, and obviously I would also want that, an app or something easy like to press a button and I have a prediction. That would be ideally, is what I would like and what I'm trying to get. But to get to that, like, I just press a button and get the prediction, you have to have all the background, literally all the programming or the schematics, all the logic design, and the structure to support this. Because otherwise you're like fighting alone against the world, which is not the best idea. And we tried to gather, like, at first I think I actually wrote to the producer of the sensors and I was like, you know, can you introduce some more like analysis things? And the answer was a standard one, which was like, we would take decline. Okay, sorry. If that was the signal I was getting too long, sorry. that was really good though. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, well, I'll leave the QR while I'm explaining. And they just gave like a classical answer in which they said, we will take your suggestion into consideration.